not nice.
We're with Steve Poizner. Steve is running for governor here in California. He's going to be addressing, in just a few minutes, he'll be addressing Western CPAC. I found out some deeply disturbing information about Steve Poizner just moments ago. You're a San Francisco Giants fan.
I love the Giants, I got to admit it. It was a rebuilding year, and they finally went over 500 for the first time in a few years here. But there's a few more years of rebuilding left before they're competitive, darn it. They struggled there at the end. It was a lot of fun. It was a good season.
It's a good season. It was a great baseball season, of course, because the Dodgers won the division, and that's my team. So, I'm politically.
Manny's back and all? I mean, did you miss him?
Did I miss? No, actually, I thought they played pretty well when Manny was out.
It's amazing how well they played. They played better when he wasn't there.
Actually, their percentage was better when he wasn't there. So I'm not sure what that says about Manny, but it says
he's a big gun. They need him now.
Lay off the steroids, man. That's what it says. All right. Well, I don't want to put you on the record about that, so we'll leave that one alone. But you're going to be addressing the conservative gathering here, and what is it that you are going to tell Western CPAC about Steve Poizner, about the state of conservatism in California? It seems like it's been marginalized over the years, but people here are pretty enthusiastic.
I'm going to tell them that don't listen to people who come in here or come into the CRP conventions or whatever and say that we need to rebrand ourselves. I mean, and that people shouldn't listen to the people who say that we have to move the Republican Party to the center or whatever. That's just wrong. Core conservative principles appeal to a majority of Californians. We get into trouble as a party here, in my opinion, when we elect people here and send them to Sacramento, or when we send them to Washington, D.C., and these Republicans end up abandoning core Republican principles. That's when we get into trouble. So the message I have for CPAC today is that the state of California is in a mess, complete crisis, and core Republican principles can get us out of this mess we're in. This is about fixing our economy. It's about lowering the tax rates. It's about streamlining regulations, because California used to be the best place on the planet to come and start and grow companies. Now it's just not the case. We lose 3,000 people a week. 3,000 taxpayers a week, each and every week, pick up and leave the state of California because of our oppressive jobs climate. That's got to get fixed. That's why I'm running for governor.
California is in a deep crisis, and of course, unemployment's over 12.2% now,
yes,
I think.
That's
and
the official unemployment.
That's the official unemployment.
Unofficial, 17-18%.
This is a state. I mean, is a recovery even possible in the short run here in California? It just seems that you have so many structural problems in terms of state spending, the tax code that you've got here. There are no real quick fixes to this, but there's certainly a way to get on the right track. What would be your path to get on the right track?
Well, the 12.2% official unemployment rate is the worst unemployment since the Great Depression here in California. California has lost 750,000 jobs just in the last year. Our unemployment rate is 2.5 points higher than the national average. So this is truly a meltdown. Worst mess since maybe the inception of the state in 1850. My plan is to be bold and comprehensive about fixing the jobs-creating environment. People want to be in California, after all. It's a beautiful state. It's got great weather, great natural resources, a very entrepreneurial culture. We just need to get government out of the way. Hence, my centerpiece of my whole campaign are broad-based tax cuts. Yes, you heard me correctly, tax cuts. No one else is talking about tax cuts. Everyone's talking about which taxes to raise in order to balance the huge budget hole. That's a huge mistake. We already raised taxes this year by $25 billion. In the middle of a deep recession, that was one of the worst pieces of public policy in 50 years coming out of Sacramento. So my proposal is to cut personal income tax brackets, every bracket by 10%, cut corporate taxes by 10%, cut sales taxes by 10%, and cut capital gains taxes by 50%. If we do that, we'll be competitive again. And you watch, tax rates will go down, total tax revenues will go up as job creators, innovators, taxpayers come back to California. That's the key. That'll be the message in my whole campaign, is that we need to make California competitive in the 21st century global economy. That's how we solve our budget mess.
Well, let's talk about the budget mess for just a moment. The California legislator and current governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, thought that they'd had the problem solved. They passed a budget bill a few weeks ago, thought that the problem was solved. I think it was last week. They discovered that they're once again billions of dollars back in the red because the revenues did not match their very rosy expectations. The the assumptions on which they built that thing. Is this current political leadership in California even capable of solving this problem now?
Well, it's no surprise that we have a budget mess again. They keep doing the same thing, the same mistake, over and over and over. And the mistake really comes in two different ways. The first mistake is they think by raising taxes, that'll help actually balance the budget. It only makes matters worse. Every time they raise taxes, revenues go down, they miss the revenue targets, people leave the state at a more rapid clip. The second mistake they make is that they simply have not gotten control of spending. Spending has doubled here in the state of California in the last 10 years. Over $100 billion in a year now is our total budget. If at the same pace we're going, we'll be at $200 billion a year in 10 years. I mean, this is unsustainable. And so what we need to do, in addition to cut taxes, is we need to reduce spending significantly. Now, I'm the insurance commissioner here in California. That's an elected position in this state, only one of 8 positions elected statewide. When I got into the Department of Insurance 2.5 years ago, this big, huge bureaucracy, $200 million budget, I did a top-down review of every dollar, every person. I looked at every single dime that was spent. Started with 1,300 employees. Now I have a little bit more than 1,100 employees now after this top-down review. I've been able to cut my expenses permanently by 15%. Now I have a huge surplus at the Department of Insurance, and I pass that surplus back into the marketplace through tax cuts on insurance agents and brokers and companies that fund, my Department of Insurance. That's what we need to do throughout every single state department and state agency. There's 400 of them, 400 agencies approximately in California. None of them have done a top-down review. None of them have modernized. There's been no overhauls. That's been a big, huge mistake on the part of the leadership in Sacramento. As governor, I'm going to do this thorough overhaul of every single state department, state agency. We'll get our expenses down. In fact, I have a spending plan to cut spending by at least $10 billion in my first 2 years. Combine that with my tax cuts to help grow the economy. Now we have a plan. Now you can see how spending will go down and revenues will go up. That's how we solve our problems here.
You're up against a celebrity candidate of sorts, and I'm not saying like an Arnold Schwarzenegger celebrity, but a business celebrity, somebody who made a big splash in the business world, Meg Whitman, who was the CEO of eBay. What's your strategy to run against sort of the outsider mentality that Meg Whitman is bringing into the race?
Mm-hmm. A lot of people, especially Republican primary voters, have had it with celebrity. Really. They're looking for a serious and bold and creative problem solver because the state's in desperate shape. People are really worried now. They're worried about losing their jobs, and they're barely hanging on to their home mortgage payments. I mean, people are struggling. And so my track record of 20 years of success at starting companies from scratch, I know how to create jobs. People will admire that. But they will also zero in on my 8 years of success now in politics and in public sector service. I worked in the White House for a year in national security work in the 9/11 crisis. I taught a year in a high school in a low-income area. I'm one of the pioneers of the California charter school movement. I've run successfully statewide. I've now taken this large Department of Insurance and shrank it, proved that I can be effective in the public sector. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for someone that has demonstrated successful leadership in both the private sector and the public sector. So for me, I'm not a celebrity marketing guru. What I am is an entrepreneur and an engineer. I build things. I fix things. I couldn't be any different than Governor Schwarzenegger in terms of my background and my approach. And right now, that's what voters are looking for.
Steve Poizner, running for governor in California. Thanks for sitting down with us, and best of luck. We're looking forward to your speech coming up here at Western CPAC.
Thank you.
And go Dodgers.